This is the High School Football Preview Show with Mike Wennmacher, Tim Schweizer, Steve Bridge, and Derek Parris on 97.7 and 970 WMAY, Springfield's news and talk.
Welcome in to week 2 of the High School Football Preview Show. I am Mike Wennmacher, joined by the illustrious panel. You hear him on the Rochester Rockets games, Steve Bridge. You hear him on the SHG Cyclo games, Tim Schweizer. And you see him everywhere with Channel 1450. I think that he's probably cloned himself a few times, Derek Parris. Guys, I appreciate you joining me. We got week 1 in the books. So we actually have some real football to talk about before we look ahead to week 2. So, Tim, let me start with you. SHG, obviously not the result they wanted in week 1, but they knew they had a tall task with the team they were playing. What were some of the positives you saw from the Cyclones in that ball game against Christian Brothers?
CBC brought probably a little slower of a team than they had last year, but they still had 8 or 9 kids who are D1 commits or prospects, just a bigger, faster, stronger team, and they dominated the Cyclones up front. Positives, SHG got 3 big plays in the passing game, and I think the fact that they had real difficulty running the ball on CBC both last year and last week, that passing game looked as good as it could given the circumstances, and the Cyclones tried to take some positives out of a game in which they already had some kids down with injuries, and they have even more kids down with injuries as a result of that game last week. So the positive is, at times, their offense showed some spark, and the other good news is they don't have to play CBC again this week.
Derek, you saw some of the highlights from that game. What is something you took away from that SHG game?
Yeah, I think SHG can take away some positives for sure. Like Tim said, that team was bigger, stronger, and faster than them. And there was a couple of times where the guy would get out in space and it looked like he was running in fast forward instead of just regular time. Like that's just how quick they were. But like Tim said, some big pass plays. Cam Brinkman had a great game. I mean, if you just look at the numbers, obviously they were playing from behind, and so they had to throw it a little bit more. But I don't know. I came away from that game being still impressed with SHG. And I think that they're going to win a lot of games this year based on the talent that they have back. And Coach Allison said it, they're still young in a lot of spots. And so getting that varsity experience and getting to see a team like that is only going to benefit them early on in the year.
Steve, let me go to you, Rochester. I'm as the color guy there, you had to have the entire roster ready to go, it looked like, considering Derek with all the toys he has this year. They get that big win over Gibson Southern. What were some of your takeaways from that Rochester victory week 1?
Well, no better way to kind of inaugurate a brand new stadium. I mean, plain surface, video board, lights, that kind of a stuff, expanded stands. Then the very first play from scrimmage for Rochester is like a 69-yard touchdown run for the Rockets, and all of a sudden it's 6-0 with the kick. They make it 7-0. So it was an unbelievable start to kind of their 30th football season. I think it's going to encapsulate just how explosive this team can be this year. There were a lot of long plays from scrimmage. There were very, very short touchdown drives to the Rockets. They've just got, as you mentioned, it's a deep roster. It's a 2 deep. It's even a 3 deep. I think in some places for the Rockets, they can really shift a lot of personnel in and out. And if you look at that offensive stat sheet, you say, okay, we saw, this name, that name, but where was this player? Boy, they didn't throw the ball this kid's way. I wonder when that will happen. And that will just occur every single week here, I think, for the Rockets. If you were wondering where one player was the previous week, it might be, this upcoming Friday or next Friday, when all of a sudden that's the player that has, say, 70 or 80 receiving yards and, a couple of big touchdowns and catches all over the place, because it's a long list of players that are going to be able to make an impact for the Rockets this year. And you saw 3 quarterbacks, a couple of different kids really making an impact running the ball, and, defensive big plays all over the place.
Derek, you talk with Derek Leonard, and as do you, Steve, but how giddy is he now after he saw what happened in week 1? I mean, he almost seems like an evil genius with that guy, especially when he gets this many toys.
Yeah, I can't imagine being a defensive coordinator, watching, like Steve said, watching the previous week and then saying, okay, well, that quarterback has this tendency. Well, that quarterback may not even play the first quarter. I mean, it just depends. Like, there's so many different options. And, for us on Channel 1450, our high school fantasy football league, it's impossible to pick the Rochester wide receivers because there's like 10 or 12 of them that we really could take and probably 8 or 9 that could have 100-yard games. And rushing wise, there's 4 or 5. And yeah, like to give that many toys to Derek Leonard is just really unfair at this level.
As far as the Glenwood game, I had a chance to talk with Coach Hay earlier this morning, and I asked him this question of if that was a perfect week 1 for a coach, in the fact that they got a big win on the road against a tough opponent, but there was enough things on tape that he can point to and be like, we got to get better. And he agreed. And it was interesting the way he talked about his seniors, in the fact that when he went into halftime to talk to that defense, he said he really didn't even have to tell them what they were doing wrong. They kind of figured it out on their own. And when you hear something like that, when you have 38 seniors, that's got to make a coach feel good. That, and talking about Blake Lanen, Derek, you can speak to it as well. It feels like that kid was making up for lost time. 14 catches in that football game against Edwardsville. He was a force.
I mean, what a great sort of security blanket to have for Colton Knadler, and just being able to say, hey, Blake's down there somewhere. Let me get it to him. Or, if he's on that side of the field, let me look for him, because yeah, he's going to catch the ball. He's fast. And just to have that sort of option, it just creates so many more different things for the offense. And like you said, I think Michael came back from that game and really talked about how there was just kind of a calmness on the sideline with such a big game, obviously playing a bigger team, but that many seniors, they were really just, focused. They knew what they had to do and they were ready to get it done.
Yeah, I think you hit on something. That was something else Coach said about just the composure of that team of, when the defense may have been struggling, the offense, whether they knew it or not, just portrayed themselves as, okay, we got to pick them up, and vice versa. And it was just kind of inherent in them because these guys have been around on the varsity level for as long as they have been. It is the high school football preview show, week 2. And before we move on to looking at the opponents for each one of these teams in week 2, I want to give a shout out to everyone else on this panel. You were correct. Tim, you said normal U High is going to be good. Steve, Derek, you're like, oh, Springfield's going to light it up. And then my team Southeast kind of laid an egg there. So biggest surprise, I'll go around. Tim, biggest surprise from week 1 in the CS8 for you outside of the games we've been talking about?
Well, on the Springfield High Champaign game that started the season last Thursday, they were down 15 at halftime, looked terrible on offense, and their defense wasn't much better. But they scored 44 points in the second half, win by 10, scored 51 points opening night with a great come-from-behind win, and a tough MacArthur team to play. Week for both MacArthur and Springfield as far as playoffs for 2025.
Steve, real quick for you, big surprise from week 1, your biggest surprise outside the games we've discussed?
Lanphier getting a win against the Lincoln Railers. Great for the Lions. Snap a long losing streak, and a city school with some success sets them up. What's better than winning week 1 for anybody, whether you're Glenwood and against 7A Edwardsville, or you're the Lanphier Lions, and you got to create a little bit of juice and some excitement there on your sidelines and make that team believe more in themselves. So the Lions getting that week 1 victory was really great for them.
Derek, how about you?
I think you got to look at how many points U High scored in that game and say that that's impressive for a lot of turnover on the roster, especially on the offensive side of the ball. The new quarterback, Owen Kirby, probably that was kind of the question. And I saw Brody at Rochester on Saturday, and I said, hey, were you trying to score 100, in week 1? And he's like, no, we were really working on some things. I'm like, well, it seemed to work. I mean, it looked like you guys were able to put up some points. So he was really impressed with that. And they're really excited just looking ahead to this week at playing another city school and getting a chance to get some redemption from last year, I think.
Well, let's look at week 2. Tim, let's start with the Cyclones. They have a road trip to Mascoutah. What are you looking for from that particular ball game you're calling Friday night?
They're playing a bigger school, not bigger than CBC, but a bigger school in Mascoutah. Beat them last year, ran the ball really well against Mascoutah at Cyclone Stadium last season. I know Coach Allison, with all the injuries, wants to get more out of his run game this week. And after the good first week that Cam Brinkman had throwing the ball for Sacred Heart Griffin, you might see a 50-50 split on offense, and the Cyclones will need that. Mascoutah's kind of young. They've got a junior back who ran for over 100 yards against SHG last year. His name's Sean Murphy. And Cyclones are going to have to stop him. And if they Friday night.
Steve, you got Mount Zion and Rochester. I was just looking at, early polls don't really mean a whole heck of a lot, but two of the highly ranked teams in 4A. What are you expecting for this Rochester Mount Zion game Friday?
So this is a grudge match that is between two schools that don't play very often, if nearly ever. It's been a while. They've matched up a couple times in the postseason, but there just seems to be this natural rivalry between Mount Zion and Rochester. And then it's the things that happen even when the two teams aren't connected to each other. So last year, Rockets fall to Peoria Notre Dame, week one of the postseason. Mount Zion beats Peoria Notre Dame the following week, makes the state finals, runner-up last year in 4A. So that kind of sticks in the craw of Rochester, right? Because Rochester players feel like they should have been there last year. They should have matched up directly against that Mount Zion team a year ago. Maybe the Mount Zion players and school feels pretty good about beating the team that beat the 9-time state champions in the Rochester Rockets. So this is going to be, I think, a pretty physical matchup. It's just one that already seems to just kind of set up to have a lot of nice little storylines going with it. Look, everybody's going to talk about J.C. Anderson. He's one of the number one tight ends in the state and one of the top tight ends in the nation. For right now, he's going to Ole Miss. He is a huge target. He is 6'7", 240 pounds. He's back, but he's not the leading receiver. In fact, the leading receiver wasn't even Trimble, the kid that went on to Illinois last year for Mount Zion. That's Jacob Harvey. He's back, had a huge game against Limestone in week one. So Mount Zion's kind of like the Rockets. They've got a lot of different people to throw the ball to, good running back, dual threat quarterback who's a tough kid, super fast track athlete, runs about 11 a second, 100 wrestler. So I'm expecting as good of a game, if not a better game, than the Rockets had week one against Gibson Southern, because Mount Zion is really talented. They're really deep. It's a road game for the Rockets. Got to go over there to Macon County and to play in a really tough environment that the Mount Zion faithful are going to be, they're going to be tuned up for. It's going to be a heck of a contest Friday night.
Do you think, Steve, there's going to be enough light bulbs on the scoreboard then, considering all the stuff you've given me and what we saw in week one?
Well, hey, first quarter of the Rocket game took like 45 minutes to play. Then everybody wore out. Everybody kind of got a little hot, little bogged down because it was a day game, and then everything settled back down for a bit. This one at night, and maybe those offenses are a tick ahead of the defenses. We'll see. It could be a high-scoring game, but J.C. Anderson plays defensive end too, and the Rockets had 2 interceptions and forced a turnover on defense. So this is going to be one of those really great matchups where everybody comes in really balanced both sides of the ball. So, hey, it might take 45 or 50 to win, but it also might take 35 and a really good defensive effort out of somebody to keep the other team on the losing side.
Looking forward to the Glenwood Titans. They got North County from Missouri. They had a really hard-fought victory over that team last year down at North County. It's the home opener for the Titans. And I think for Glenwood, the nice thing is against Edwardsville, they weren't expecting to see Edwardsville throw the ball as often as they did, talking to Coach Hay. That's why they had made those adjustments at halftime. They kind of know what they're going to get with North County. They're a team that ran the ball 44 times last year against Glenwood. So you get 2 really tough opponents, week 1 and 2, but 2 entirely different offensive schemes. And I think that's going to be a big key and a big bonus for the Titans going forward in the fact that they're seeing these 2 different types of offenses. It'll be intriguing to me to see if the defensive front from the Titans steps up. Because the fact in week 1, it was more a spread out offense from Edwardsville. So we'll see how the Glenwood Titans can do in the trenches. As we all know, we've watched enough football. The trenches are really where games can be won and lost. We don't pay a lot of attention to them because there's not a lot of highlights that we show, but that's really is the key to the ball game. So that's something I'm going to be looking at when the Titans take on North County on Friday night on 9:70 a.m. Now, Derek, where is Channel 1450? You guys have a game of the week. What's the game of the week this week for Channel 1450?
Yeah, when you get two of the top-ranked teams in 4A meeting in Mount Zion, you kind of have to lean that way. And so I have a preview piece that I'm almost finished with where we talked to two of the players from Rochester, two from Mount Zion, and then both the head coaches. And they both kind of said the same thing that Steve talked about is, they both kind of felt like they wanted to play each other last year. So getting the chance to do it this year is really exciting for both of them to see where they're at this point in the year. So that's going to be our game of the week. And like Steve said, I mean, really excited to see some points over there. And I know Braden Trimble was the star last year and the reason they got to the state championship game, but I was really impressed with their defense, especially their linebackers. And I think that last year they were very similar to the type of linebacker you see from Rochester, where they're maybe undersized, but man, they hit hard. They just fly around and really fun to watch on that side of things. So that's something I'm going to be looking forward to as well on Friday.
Are you anticipating, Derek, if that's a game you're going to be at? How are you going to keep the highlight clip to within 5 to 6 minutes possibly in that game?
Hey, we don't have any limits on Channel 1450. I can make it a 10-minute highlight if I want to. It just might take me till midnight, but that's okay.
Well, gentlemen, I appreciate it as always. It is the high school football preview show. Tim, go ahead and let everyone know where they can catch the Cyclones game and when the pregame starts.
Pregame will be at 6 with the John Allison show, and 6:30 we'll have the Alderman Brad Carlson pregame show headed into a 7 o'clock kickoff at Mascoutah. And Mike, that's all on Sports Radio 92.3 FM and 1450 AM, as well as sportsradio1450.com and the Sports Radio 1450 mobile app.
Steve, where can people catch the Rockets game versus Mount Zion Friday night?
Chris McLeod and I begin the broadcast from Mount Zion, 6:30, 97.7 FM, streaming on the WMAY app and over the World Wide Web.
And with the Glenwood game against North County, it'll be Ryan Fantozzi and former Glenwood coach Dan Rourke, and you can catch that on 970 AM WMAY. Also, I believe there is a secondary stream you can get from the app as well as WMAY.com. Derek, Tim, Steve, safe travels this weekend. It's going to be a great weekend for football. We're looking forward to it and can't wait till we reconvene again next week here for week 3 of the high school football preview show.
Catch the high school football preview show live every Friday night at 6 on 97.7 and 970 WMAY. Listen to the podcast and watch the replay online at WMAY.com.